Hey everyone, welcome or welcome back to just one more row, a little crafting vlog we got going on here. I wanted to go ahead and show off another one of the projects I got done out of that great big batch of projects I was working on. And that is, ta-da, the pink Colorwork sweater. I've made this sweater before. I actually have one that's in like autumny colors. And this is my redesigned version of this one, which is an actual vintage sweater for a teenager. And I really liked this, but there were certain little things in here that I was not a super huge fan of, so I went ahead and redid a lot of the math for it and redesigned, taking some inspiration out of here, and I changed a few things and added in some extra bits and bobs. But I wanted to keep the basic essence of it the same. So this is Colorwork, but only on the front. So if you're pretty new to Colorwork, but you've made sweaters in the past, working one in pieces, first off, I know not everybody's a huge fan of piecework. I really love working in piecework. Mostly because what I do is vintage and pretty much everything is done in piecework. And so I'd recommend just literally work your front. Just do it that way. And so you can get a feel for something, but it's not as all over, and it works out to be a little bit easier and a little bit faster. And I just happen to like the way that it looks. So this is everything done in pink. This is a beigey tan color. Let's see here. A dark pink, a light pink, purple, and a dark purple. And the other reason that I really love projects that are like this is because this is a great stash busting thing. Because while I have everything here in all these colors, a lot of these were stash busting colors. Believe it or not, I actually had to get into open up a different ball of yarn for this one. But down here, I wanted to use up this last little bit of this light pink, so I used it up. Please excuse my lights, they're flickering for some reason. I'm trying to use up the last of this light purple. I have a little bit of this dark purple left. I had a lot of this pink, this dark pink left, and I still have quite a bit of it left. Which you may actually, it's right there. So I have some more projects that I'm going to be working on to hopefully use all of that up. Because I don't like having the single skeins just lying around. I like being able to take everything, use it up completely. So I have a little basket of my odds and ends that are still within the same weight of yarn that I use for pretty much everything. And I'm trying to figure out projects that I can actually use those in. Recycle yarn when and where you can, just because it makes more sense. Why throw it out if you don't need to? So anyway, this front here, it's stockinette. It is actually Fair Isle. So there are some rules for that. So only 2 colors per row. And these stitches here, really light? Really? Okay. And between the color changes are no more than 7 stitches in between each color change. So no more than 7 stitches in between each color change. Those are some of the rules for Fair Isle. Because Fair Isle is Colorwork, but not all Colorwork is Fair Isle. Now the one thing I will say is that if you are doing any designing stuff and you are doing set-in sleeves like I have here, so you can see these are set-in sleeves, try to time your Colorwork. Like here I have little spaces in between each of these larger patterns, and I am timing it so that in these in these little spaces where there's only one color being used, that's where I'm shooting to have my arm decreases at when I do my cast offs. It's just a lot easier. Trying to do cast offs in multiple colors, it's possible, but it's fiddly. And if it doesn't need to be fiddly, why have it be fiddly? Moving on, in some of my other work, I have done this in stockinette. So this may be my interesting oops, or maybe I just need to remeasure myself. Because this particular sweater came out a little on the tighter side, but I did do something a little bit different. I did do this kind of mock broken rib design. Just because stockinette can become very boring. There it is on the inside. So you can see that there. So you have a column of knit stitches, and then you have a column of moss stitch. So knit stitch, purl stitch, knit stitch, purl stitch. And I did that because I don't like doing massive amounts of just plain stockinette. It's not very exciting. And I get bored easily. Henceforth, why I do all of this extra color work is because I get bored. What I was not anticipating was how much that particular broken rib design was going to pull in. And it does. A lot. So I think this will fit very well after I lose about 5-10 pounds. I don't know. Now the collar here, I did it a little bit longer because I like the longer collars, and I'm still debating on whether or not I actually want to come back in and sew this down. I might, just because it wants to pull in and pull away from this edge, and I just don't think it looks as great. It makes this edge look really huge. And that's kind of a personal thing there. But that's what's going on with this particular piece. It's done. I can go ahead and throw down the basic pattern for it, but honestly, if you do knitting in the old way, put in your measurements, you will be able to figure out what you need. I would recommend, when you're doing color work, go ahead and figure out what your stitches per inch is supposed to be, and then try to work out your color work stitch patterns so that they are, if you get 7 stitches to the inch, try to fit them in so that they're a multiple of 7. And that's going to make life really easy when you're trying to figure out like what the front, how wide to make the front. Well, then you can just put in that multiple of 7 or 8 or 5 or whatever the number is. And it just makes it easier for you to chart things out because you already know each section of this is going to be 1 inch wide or 2 inches wide or 5 or whatever the number happens to be. I find that's a lot easier for me. I'm also doing some of these things in multiple sizes, and it just makes calculating it a lot easier. And if you take for your color work and say your row count was very important, you just calculate, okay, well, I want my color work to be 9 rows tall, so each section of this color work I know is going to be 1 inch. For my lace, the Matron's Lacy blouse that I made, I knew that I was getting 12 rows per inch. Each repetition of that lace was 6 rows. So 2 repetitions of the lace equals 1 inch. And so when I was calculating for the sides, I just needed to count the repetitions of lace, and I knew how long it was going to be. That is how I like doing things. If that is a system that works for you, awesome. But other than that, man, it's been kind of a longer thing. I've got still have a lot of projects in the works. So I have an orange dress that I'm working on right now. It was originally a cardigan with little puffed sleeves. The issue there was that it was too short, and the way I'd set everything up with the buttons and the buttonholes, the buttons were too small and the buttonholes were spaced a little too far apart, so you had like that weird gaping thing. And not a fan of that. So I went ahead and looked at it and said, okay, well, I don't want to get rid of this because I really like it. I love the orange color. I think that the top is pretty cute. So I'm kind of trying this concept of taking something older. How do I modify it in order to keep it being useful? I've done that with a couple of my other shirts, just lengthening them. The bottoms of those don't look super great, but they're really for wearing around the house. And so they went from being crop tops into being something that is more wearable. So that I wasn't showing off my tummy and all that kind of stuff all the time. which is something that I do not like. That is a personal preference. That is not a judgment. I also had a pink dress that was a crocheted top that I've shown here on the channel. And I've gone ahead and I've finished off the skirt for that. I'm having to learn a couple extra skills to do the lining. So I'm learning how to hand sew. I'm breaking down and finally doing it. And I'll have a whole thing on that as a separate video / rant / discussion on how that's going. I got this one done and I'm actually really happy with it. I love the way that the colors on it turned out. I think it looks really nice. It's just a little snug. little snugger than I was anticipating. But you know, that's gonna be okay. And interestingly enough, last night I was laying on the couch, not feeling super hot because I'd been hand sewing all day and working on the orange blouse at night and all that kind of fun stuff. And so I'm like, you know, I was going to do a whole bunch of like extra design stuff and kind of come out and show you how I do things, like what is my mental process, the handy dandy whiteboard, and how I go about kind of using that and photographing it as I'm going through. And I decided last night, no, I am learning a whole bunch of new skills and trying to focus on those. And just no. So I went through and I have a couple other vintage patterns that I'm looking at because, you know, what I need is another white cape-hilt sweater. Oh, I have so many of them. But I have That's a Good men's one, and that's out of a Columbia magazine, and I'll show you that when we come up. And then I also found another one of my magazines that's actually for children / teenagers, and it's from the 50s, I believe. So right around the time when the idea of like teen as its own separate thing was coming about. So before you had like children's clothes, you had babies' clothes, you had children's clothes, you had adult clothes. Or rather, you had, like for women, unmarried women, and then married women's clothes. So then you had, you know, post-children's clothing. And it's kind of how it was divided up, at least according to everything that I have seen and everything I've gone through, is that seems to be how it was divided up, kind of unofficially. So this is right at that shift. This is still when people are kids. So this is like early-ish teens. I like it in here because there's a couple that are moving into that adult size. So you are just getting into like a 36-inch bust or a 37-inch bust for a couple cardigans, which would be about, you know, on some of the upper ends for teenagers, because you're not quite an adult yet, but physically you are larger than a child. I've gone ahead and picked out some of those. These are done at 8 stitches per inch. I'm just going to do mine at 7 stitches per inch. So instead of being 37 inches in circumference, it's going to be about 41. And those are going to be super cute. And I've got them pulled out, and I will go ahead and show them off when we get a little bit closer. Because I still have to pick colors and all that kind of fun stuff. But yeah, so that's what's been going on. Today's just kind of a short video, kind of updating everything, trying to get back in the habit of filming and editing, but haven't been feeling super great, so is what it is. Anyway, I just wanted to go ahead and show off that particular pink sweater. I'll go ahead and pop up my pattern for it. If you like it, cool. If you just want to use the Colorwork section of it, cool. I'll be sure to include ones that actually show what kind of colors and the color patterning that I'm using, and then I'll have one up that's blank so that you can add your own. I really recommend taking it and then print out a copy and then sit there with some colored pencils and just color it in. The same thing for doing any of the other Colorwork stuff. Work it up in Excel, pop in some colors, walk across the room, stare at it, and then see if you like it. Like it enough to do a swatch. Same thing. Work up your swatch, try to do, say, a little 4-inch square, pin it or tape it to something, pin it to a pillow and prop the pillow up, and then walk across the room and see how you like it at a distance, because that's going to really let you in on whether or not you really like the pattern at a distance, because that's what it's going to really look like. Most of the time, you're not going to be looking at your Colorwork 6 inches away from your face. You're going to see it 6 feet or more away from you. So that is how I recommend doing it, because some things can look very blurry up close, but when you see them from a distance, all of a sudden, it makes a lot more sense. So anyway, yeah, I'm going to quit babbling now, and thanks for hanging out, and yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Have fun and make stuff.